On June 14th, just after midnight in Badung district, Bali, the late night silence of this quiet area was shattered as a brutal home invasion took place. During the break-in, 32-year-old Zivan Radmanovic from Melbourne, taking what was supposed to be a relaxing break, was shot and killed in the villa near Mungu Beach. His friend, also in the villa, was left critically wounded. Their partners, two sisters, survived the attack by hiding away. They had to listen in sheer terror as gunmen talking in mysteriously familiar Australian accents carried out the attack, seemingly targeted at their loved ones. The questions that immediately spring to mind are why had fellow Australians followed Radmanovic to Bali with the intention of killing him? Who were these masked intruders? And what did Radmanovic do to warrant an attack of this brutality? So first of all, who exactly was the victim? Zivan Radmanovic was a 32-year-old man from Melbourne. Whilst he was far from a public figure and led a mostly private life, he was known for having ties to the city's nightlife and social scene. He has been described by those who knew him as well-connected and street-smart. However, that meant he was often found in the same circles as criminals. After all, city nightlife is usually a hotbed of criminal activity. He had no officially reported criminal convictions himself, but he did appear in police intelligence reports. That tells us that he was known to authorities looking into organised crime in Victoria. The circles he mixed in were often full of people linked to the city's ongoing turf battles, particularly involving the illicit tobacco trade and nightclub-related operations. His business dealings are believed to have put him in contact with individuals on both sides of the hidden wars being fought in Melbourne's underground. We know little more about his life and lifestyle than that. He wasn't big on social media and kept himself out of the public eye, so we can only work with the little information we have. One thing we can say with certainty is that at the time of his death, he was married to Jasmine Gordius, the sister of Daniela Gordius, a beauty salon owner in Melbourne. Daniela, as mentioned earlier, was dating Radmanovic's friend, Sanar Ghanem, who was also present in Bali. Zivan and Jasmine had 6 children together. It wasn't just Radmanovic who had ties to illegal activity back in Melbourne. Daniela, notably, was once engaged to a man connected to key figures in Melbourne's illicit tobacco wars. Sanar Ghanem also had a documented connection to criminal circles, being the former partner of Danielle Stevens, stepdaughter of slain gangland figure Carl Williams, and the pair has a child together. The Bali trip was supposed to be a holiday with close friends, an escape from the intensity of day-to-day life back home. However, whilst on the surface this was a celebratory holiday for Jasmine's 30th birthday, it may also have been for another reason. It's possible the 4 friends were trying to escape and lay low due to tensions back home. Investigators now believe the attack is linked to violent disputes between Middle Eastern organised crime groups operating in Melbourne, hinting that long-standing grievances may have followed Radmanovic and his companions overseas. Police have not publicised any explicit threats or warnings before the trip, but authorities suspect the group's criminal associations may have made them targets for violent retaliation. For Radmanovic, the trip would be a final chapter marked by violence. On June 12th, 2025, he arrived on the island with Jasmine, Daniela and Sanar and headed to their villa, called Casa Santicia, near Mungu Beach, a tranquil spot, nice and quiet, away from any stress left at home. The trip proceeded as any vacation would be expected to. There were no suspicious activities, no confrontations, no records of anything untoward at all. However, unbeknownst to the group, something was happening. How the attack had been planned and how it was going to be executed hint at premeditation. The suspects arrived in Bali, hired vehicles, and started collecting together tools needed to force their way into a property. In short, they knew exactly what they were doing and had a solid plan of how they were going to do it. Just after midnight on June 14th, 2025, 2 masked men arrived on a scooter, almost silent. Then, the chaos began. One man wore an orange jacket with a dark helmet, the other dark green, a black mask and a matching helmet. Both men spoke English with distinct Australian accents. They forced their way inside, instantly transforming the villa into a battleground, or more accurately, a killing ground. Jasmine was the first to realise something was wrong. She was woken by her husband's screams and instinctively hid under a blanket as the invaders moved room to room. The sound of gunfire broke the midnight silence, with multiple shots echoing through the villa. Windows shattered, and the men rifled through bedrooms to make sure that they had everyone where they wanted them. Radmanovic tried to escape but was cornered in the bathroom. The attackers fired repeatedly, leaving him fatally wounded. Investigators later documented the scene. 17 spent casings, 2 unexploded bullets, and 55 bullet fragments scattered across the tiled floor. This was a truly merciless barrage of gunshots. Radmanovic had been shot twice in the chest, once in the foot, with further injuries to his face and shoulder. He would die at the scene. Karnim was also targeted. He was beaten and shot, sustaining life-threatening wounds, but ultimately surviving. Daniela and Yasmin, though severely traumatized, escaped physical harm. In statements to police, both women described hearing the shooters' voices, the crash of glass, and the confusion as they desperately sought safety. After the gunfire ceased, the attackers scrambled to escape. One was overheard saying, "I can't start my bike," struggling with the ignition before fleeing on their scooter, vanishing into the Bali night as suddenly as they arrived. The 2 survivors simply wept and clung to each other, finding Radmanovic's body in the bathroom and tending to Ghanim's injuries. Police photographs captured the carnage, blood on the tiles, bullet-riddled windows, and the hollow emptiness of a room where terror had just unfolded. Bali police responded rapidly to the scene. When officers arrived, they found Radmanovic dead in the bathroom. The surviving members of the group were immediately questioned and later relocated to a secure location for their protection. Forensic specialists set to work meticulously collecting evidence. Investigators documented the trajectory of bullets, examined the forced entry, and gathered security camera footage from the villa and the surrounding area. Within hours, police secured witness statements from the women who described 2 masked men with Australian accents arriving on a scooter, one in an orange jacket, the other in dark green, masked and helmeted. These testimonies would ultimately provide the investigation with vital clues as to who these men were and where they might be. Authorities quickly realized the attack showed all the signs of premeditation. In addition to forensic evidence inside the villa, police discovered significant items abandoned during the culprit's escape attempt. One of the handguns was later recovered from a rice field about 700 meters from the scene. Residue consistent with firearm discharge was found on gloves, balaclavas, and in a white van found and connected to the suspects. Collaboration between international agencies became central to solving this crime. The investigation involved both Indonesian police and the Australian Federal Police working together to analyse forensics, trace the suspects' movements, and secure border alerts, as it became clear the perpetrators would probably try to flee the country as soon as they could. But who were these men? Within days of the murder, Indonesian authorities publicly named 3 Australian men as prime suspects: Mevlut Coskun, Paea I Middlemore Tupou, and Darcy Jenson. These men quickly became known in the media as the Bali Three. Each suspect played a clear role in the crime. Coskun and Tupou were identified as the gunmen who entered the villa, while Jenson acted as the chief facilitator, handling logistics, communications, and transportation. Surveillance footage and forensic evidence placed Coskun and Tupou at the scene, both matching eyewitness descriptions of the masked intruders with Australian accents. Their entry to Bali had been carefully planned. Investigators found records of local scooter rentals, the purchase of a sledgehammer and gloves at a hardware store, and multiple hotel reservations under false names. Jenson, meanwhile, was traced through electronic communications and receipts. His role was the planning of both the home invasion and a rapid escape route for the attackers. All 3 suspects tried to evade capture. They abandoned vehicles, disposed of evidence, including one of the handguns, and discarded their clothing. The men used various means of transportation across Bali and onto Java to try and disappear. Jenson purchased ferry and bus tickets in an elaborate attempt to divert police and misdirect them. Immigration records and Interpol assistance led to the capture of suspects across multiple countries, including Coskun and Tupou in Jakarta, with Jenson apprehended later in Singapore. Authorities do not believe this was personal. Not a simple personal vendetta anyway. They believe it is possibly tied to larger criminal interests in Melbourne. Their attempted escape, reliance on false documents, and sophisticated planning bear all the hallmarks of experienced operatives. Violence and evasion were nothing new to these men. The men were now in custody, but the plot thickens further. The violence was not over. Just weeks after the shocking murder of Radmanovic in Bali, there was a second attack, this time in the heart of Melbourne. On July 11th, 2025, a high-end beauty salon owned by Daniela Gordas, the sister of Radmanovic's partner and a survivor of the Bali attack, was deliberately firebombed. The survivors may have thought their ordeal was over after returning home, but they could not be more wrong. The firebombing, which left the boutique severely damaged, is under active police investigation and is being directly linked by authorities and media to the gangland assassination in Bali just weeks earlier. No one was physically harmed, but it was a clear message sent to the Gordea sisters. Police suspect the same criminal networks implicated in targeted killings like Radmanovic's are behind the salon attack, aiming to extend their message of retribution wherever it may take them. The link between these two events shows how Australia's organised crime wars are now fought both at home and overseas. There is no escape once you're involved. The Melbourne tobacco wars have gripped Victoria since March 2023, starting as a violent conflict between rival criminal gangs over control of Australia's highly lucrative illegal tobacco trade. Driven by some of the world's steepest tobacco taxes, this black market is worth billions annually, making it an irresistible prize for organised crime groups. Things have only escalated from there, with multiple firebombings, extortion, shootings and ram raids taking place, with over 125 arson attacks alone reported in Victoria as of early 2025. Police task forces such as Task Force Luna have made more than 100 arrests, but the cycle of violence continues. At the heart of this ongoing war are well-organised criminal networks, many with Middle Eastern affiliations, that handle every aspect of illicit tobacco from import and manufacturing through to street-level distribution. Infighting is fierce and frequently spills into public violence. Firebombings like the one on Daniela's salon have become the most frequent type of attack connected with the tobacco wars. Sometimes it's as punishment, or sometimes it's a warning to rivals or non-compliant sellers. The murder of Zivan Radmanovic in Bali and the subsequent firebombing of Daniela Gordea's Melbourne salon have prompted investigators to probe direct links to these groups. Both victims and their partners shared connections to individuals involved in Melbourne's criminal underworld, where alliances and disputes over illegal tobacco profits are common. The timing and tactics, a targeted overseas assassination followed by an arson attack back home, fit established patterns of organised crime intimidation used throughout the tobacco conflict. Police have not publicly confirmed the Bali murder as a direct extension of the tobacco wars, but the overlap is quite obvious. Both cases involve individuals connected to high-stakes criminal rivalries, the use of violence to send messages, and cross-border operations. All of this follows suit. The three Australian suspects, known as the Bali Three, are now in Indonesian custody, facing the most serious of charges, premeditated murder. If convicted, all three men could receive the death penalty or life behind bars, while lesser charges carry sentences up to 15 years in prison. Authorities have assembled extensive evidence, including ballistics, forensic residue and surveillance footage, which was presented to the media as the investigation concluded. The biggest takeaway from this incident, this tragic and brutal murder, should be the lasting grief and sorrow of Radmanovic's family. Jasmine Gordeas expressed grief and disbelief in the wake of his death. Speaking through her lawyer, Jasmine described Zivan as a loving man and the best dad in the world, underscoring the loss, not only for herself but for their 6 children, who are now left without a father. The Bali trip, planned to celebrate Jasmine's 30th birthday, and mark their first overseas journey together, became a nightmare, culminating with her visiting her husband's body in a Bali morgue instead of sharing a joyful holiday. With the trial approaching, the case continues to grip the public in both Australia and Indonesia. media coverage remains intense. The use of firearms in Bali is rare, and this only increases the media frenzy surrounding the case. As investigators keep searching for deeper motives and possible underworld connections, security remains tight around witnesses and remaining family members. For now, the upcoming courtroom battle for justice and the lingering threat of further violence keep the attention of an uneasy public, waiting for justice and answers in a transnational crime tale that shows no sign of fading from the headlines anytime soon. The Melbourne tobacco wars are as rife as ever, and Zivan Radmanovic is just the next in a long line of unnecessary casualties as the power struggle over this lucrative criminal business continues with no end in sight. For now, this brings us to the end of the case. I'll make sure to keep an eye on any developments. If you want more stories from the Australian underworld, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps me out and helps the channel grow. Till next time, take care.